Welcome back. This is KTN News Desk. Glad you could stay with us. Back to the conversation with Westlands Member of Parliament Tim Wanyonyi on the Global Disability Summit that is currently ongoing in London, being co-hosted by UK and Kenya. And you talked about this being a very huge platform for Kenya to be able to articulate some of the issues that have been said over and again here in the country. Let's take it back to a story that one of our political affairs did about 2 months ago on access to some of the facility and access to some of the facility in Parliament. And one of the members also spoke about the PSC not having a representative from persons living with disability. Is there any headway? Has there any headway been made for this past 3 months since this story was done?
Hello? Is that to me?
Thank you for joining us. Just back to a story that was done by a political affairs reporter on the access challenges that members living with disability are encountering in Parliament. And of course, there was also concern that the Parliamentary Service Commission does not have a representative from persons living with disability. Has there been any headway made with regards to these concerns that you had at the beginning of the year?
Not really, because, you know, at the PSC, the members who sit at the PSC are members who are selected by their political parties. And you find that sometimes those numbers are very strict. And when that opportunity is missed, because most political parties, I think, have not impressed the issue with disability representation, and also looking at the constitutional threshold, how people are supposed to be, the committees are supposed to be constituted. A proper committee that is, or a commission that is properly constituted should have all the threshold as addressed by the Constitution. There must be gender balance, there must be people represented from across the board, people with disability, and all interests represented. But we find that most of these appointments have been lacking these criteria, because we find that at PSC we don't have any member of disability. Previously we had Honorable Shore, and this time we don't have anybody there.
What about the access issues to some of the facilities in Parliament? It's a concern that has been raised a number of times by members who are living with disability.
We have addressed this issue several times with the leadership of Parliament, and we are trying to make sure that if we start with Parliament, then it must also go beyond Parliament and to other sectors, because we need our streets, even our streets, to be accessible. We need to have public transport. We need to have many other areas that are accessed by the public to be accessible, including the lifts in the buildings, that a person, for example, who is visually impaired and wants to use a lift, he should be able to. Actually, the lift should have the braille imprinted on the gadget of the lift, so that they can be properly guided, or a voice that will be informing them about where the levels of the lift are reaching, or other areas. The other thing that we are trying to see is that it should not just be seen that this issue is only about members of Parliament. It should be about the whole population. People who are living in rural areas, how do they access services? Children who need to go to school, are schools accessible? Do we have infrastructure in schools that will accommodate children with disability? Are our colleges accessible to children who have passed high school, want to go to college? These are some of the things that we need to do, and this can start at the level of doing budget, so that we can allocate money or give incentives to anybody who is trying to create an environment for people with disability. For example, a private employer who has got accessibility at his workplace. If such a persons do anything like that, they should be given an incentive from the government, maybe a tax rebate or something like that, so that they are encouraged to invest more. But we can speak that legislation is there, and we need just to look in and out of the legislation to see which areas needs to be improved.
So with this current summit going on, once it's over, what are some of the things you expect to see after this summit or to have come out of this summit?
We expect that once the summit is over, they'll come up definitely with some resolutions which will be adopted by the member states of the UN, and we realize we have the UN Convention on Persons with Disabilities, which many countries, including Kenya, have ratified and have even adopted it in our own constitution and our own legislation. So I'm expecting that some of the indicators that will come from this summit will be for us as a country and other countries across the world that are participating in that global summit, to make sure that some of the issues are addressed, especially the issues to do with discrimination, issues to do with the stigma and disability mainstreaming, that it is properly addressed, and so that people with disability are not left behind in matters of development and other issues that affect them generally. Because we find that most of the things violated are actually bordering on human rights, that people with disability are completely left behind in many sectors, including employment, education, and even economic empowerment. So we find that we are looking at it wholesome, that everybody who is there, they must be addressing these issues. And I know these are some of the themes that are actually coming up in the summit.